Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Gold from 2022. So, this is a Zac Efron film, and so I would have to say personally that I've seen Zac Efron do like Man vs. Wild, and I've kind of seen him, I think, really be in his element or really being happy when he's going on and doing these like survival kind of things. So when I was to immediately go into this movie, I was like, oh yeah, this is a survival film, and Zac Efron is doing it. And man, just looking at his face throughout this film, I'm like, oh my god, this looks like he's just miserable. And I felt so bad while watching Zac Efron, and I was like hoping like, man, hopefully this has some kind of happy ending. But I've seen too many survival films. Like I've seen Ryan Reynolds' Buried, or I've seen 127 Hours, and it seems very rare that these things are to end with a happy-go-lucky ending. So I was expecting the exact same thing here. So going into this film, I would have to say that I'm kind of happy that this movie honestly is 90 hours or 90 hours, 90 minutes. I mean, 90 hours. Like, man, it felt like 90 hours. Um, like 90 minutes. I'm sorry about saying that mistake. So 90 minutes is a good enough thing of this, but I don't think that there's enough story in this film. I just feel like there is just the survival, and that's it. We, like, in the Ryan Reynolds movie Buried, there seems to be story. There seems to be people that Ryan Reynolds' character can latch onto and kind of make it through this horrible time of him being buried alive. In this movie, we just have Zac Efron, mostly just have Zac Efron, who, of course, is Virgil in this film. We do have a guy who's driving him around called Keith, but once he's kind of like gone from this film, we have him from time to time call up, but it seems like most of those conversations are a waste. Um, and then we also have it where at some point there is to be this stranger that comes into the fray of things, and during right around this time we're just starting to really just have Virgil's character starting to hallucinate and just starting to really get to the point of him like days are just blending into one another and so on and so forth. And so, but with that said, there's also a big event that is to, of course, happen towards the end of this movie. So, like, I guess also, like, look at also the movie Castaway. Like, to me, like, this movie is very similar to the Tom Hanks movie Castaway, but this guy never gets a talking a talking volleyball. We have at some points where Virgil is to possibly rely on animals that are to become crawling by. But yeah, like they're what would be my overall grading for this movie? Where can you go on and see this film? Well, really, right now, there's not a convenient way to say that you've seen this film for me. Honestly, I would recommend people a number of apps. You can go into a Google search and search the word Letter C Movies, an app that I've been fairly reliably using for a number of months. You can go on and to this app called Letter C Movies. So one letter and one word. So search this app and dare in fact be able to find an app that you can go on to download and be able to see new releases as well as old stuff. Um, you can go on and see any miraculous number of things. If you go on and also Google search a app called Fox HD Movies, that's the app that I usually use the most. The logo will say so, but the title will say something different. It'll probably say Play 1080p HD Movies. It's been a while since I've read the description of the app. But if you download that app also, you can go on to basically be able to see anything that you want without exclusions. brand new stuff like Gold that I don't even know is even out yet, but I guess I could see it anyways, and why not? So, you can also go on to a Google Play Store and download an app called TV Crush. Basically, with those apps that I've already listed and the power of the third app, you can be able to go and see whatever you want. Sometimes TV Crush has subtitles for stuff where other stuff doesn't. Or there might be a TV show in TV Crush that may not be listed upon those other apps. So if you're really a person that is to want to see it all, those three apps could probably help you see it all. So, especially Letter C movies. Anyways, so, but I use both Fox HD and Letter C. So, what is my overall grading of this film? I have to go on and say that this film is really just one of those, if you have 90 minutes to blow, then watch this film. I don't feel like there's enough story here. I just feel like the story is just survival. Really, I would love it if we could have gotten a day update of how long Zac Efron's character is out there for. I would have liked it if we would have gone on and they would have listed off, like, okay, this is day 3, this is day 6, this is day 14, this is day 30, this is day whatever. Because it seems like Efron's character, or Virgil, is out there for a very long time. Very long time. To the point of you can just see the natural progressions upon Google Photos where it's like his face just gets blacker and blacker and blacker. And I'm like, oh my god, this looks just like straight up like, man, we got some like Joker stuff going on with just Zac Efron's face. So with that said, really that's all that I have. Like, I would deem this movie a very light okay film. A very light okay. The lightest okay that I've ever seen in my life. There's just not enough story. That's the problem with this film. So if you conveniently see Gold, see it. I don't know if I would recommend people eventually, if there's a convenient way to rent this movie, to do that. I would just say for you to go out of your way to figure out if there's some way to eventually watch Gold at your easy convenience. But with that said, I'm going to go out of my way to say that it's about that double five. Let's otherwise go into much more spoilers, details. Maybe you want to hear what I have to say regardless, because maybe you're not interested in this film after I'm to go and talk about it, because I will be brutally honest about it. So, spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this movie. So, at the very beginning of this film, we of course have Virgil, Zac Efron's character, and I only know that simply because of IMDb. Like, I didn't really see the cast list or anything as I was leaving this film. So, and the cast list is ridiculously small. So, we have Virgil, who is on this train making his way to this Greenview outpost. And so as Virgil is seeing this mother and her young child, her youngling, we go on and we have Virgil here, who is to give up his thing of bread to this little child, this little cub. So we go on and we have Virgil, who walks onto this outpost, and we of course have this guy going on and telling this one guy who doesn't seem to answer, or there are some certain times where I'm kind of watching this movie and I have to kind of rehear what people are saying, and I really didn't understand what this guy said, and I don't know how many times I'd kind of countlessly, like 10 seconds, like, forwarding, and I was like, what was he saying? I was like, blah, 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 what? Blah, 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 what? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. So, no offense to this guy, I didn't understand him. So, Virgil's going on and saying, like, hey, I'm here to meet this guy at this outpost. and to go to the compound. Like, can you tell me where the bathroom is? So Virgil is to go to this outpost, and we of course have Keith makes his way to find out where Virgil is while Virgil is taking a dump. So we go on and we have Virgil as he's making his way to this outhouse. He ends up seeing this woman just like chopping this meat, and it's like, okay, it's weird. Anyways, so we go on and we have, of course, Virgil and Keith just driving on here. And so, so Virgil, before they actually drive off, we have Virgil who is kind of cleaning himself with a thing of water, and we just have Virgil who's continually letting this water run. And so Keith is telling him, like, hey man, like, so let's save up some water. So as they're driving off, we of course have Keith totaling, heaven forbid I say words. So Keith is totaling up every single thing that Virgil is to spend. The water is to be $20, and gas is to be extra also. And so we go on, we have Virgil who's saying, like, well, I thought that the $200 that I was going to pay for this trip was going to be gas included. And the guy's like, oh no, of course not. So we have this guy who's trying to go and pick this guy clean as far as money goes, as if this guy could possibly have money anyways. So they're supposedly going off to this compound. What this is, I have no idea, because they never really get there in this film. So we supposedly only have a brochure of what this compound is, but that really isn't much of anything either. And the compound is to say that 4 months on this compound, and it'll make a man out of you. And so we have Keith who sees this brochure, and he kind of laughs at it, and it's like, dude, this brochure, you need to take this with a grain of salt. So it seems that we are driving here, and at one point we have Virgil who is going and putting the air conditioner on, and excuse me, we have Keith who's trying to put the air conditioner down because it can possibly blow the engine. So we go on, and further we're driving with these characters, and so we go on, we have them stop by a fire to kind of roast up probably some wolf or some kind of food, something. So we go on here and we have these two characters, and so Virgil is to mention that he, of course, is to, I think, be somewhere east or something like that. And Keith is saying, like, yeah, it's getting really bad out there. And so I guess it's good that you're coming to this compound, because I'm sure everybody sometime soon is all going to want to go to this compound because it won't be safe anywhere else. So I guess this is some near future where all of a sudden maybe we have this interstellar thing where all of a sudden there's just a bunch of dust and the world has come down to just be sand. I don't know. Nothing is really explained in this film. So they just say that things are just going bad everywhere, to where everybody's just going to come in droves to whatever this compound is, because they don't explain that either. So we go on, and we of course have it where at some point while they're driving, and we of course have Virgil who's on the wheel, and he decides to crank up the air conditioner, and all of a sudden it takes down the engine of this car, And Keith is now livid because it's like, dude, I told you, because Keith was sleeping and Virgil was driving the car. So we go on and we have Keith mentioning that it's possibly some hose and hose. Funny. So childlike humor. Anyways, so all of a sudden, while Efron is whipping his dang out and just taking a little whiz, we go on and all of a sudden have him notice this rock that looks like gold. And so Keith is going over there and it's like, well, if I go and I burn this rock and it burns black, then it's not gold. So we have Keith going on and just starting to burn this rock, and he's like, hey man, like, there be gold in them there hills, kind of thing. So all of a sudden they just start digging this thing of gold up, and they realize that this thing is bigger and bigger and bigger the more that they dig this thing up. This big huge hunk of gold is in this is just in this dirt. And so we go on and we just have now Keith, who's using his truck to go on and try to drag this thing out, and it just won't come out. I'm like, holy how big is this gold? So we're going on and we're now having Keith, who is to decide with Virgil, hey man, like, I think what I'm going to have to do is go and find an excavator and dig this thing out. And so, like, if anything, one of us is going to have to stay by this gold and dig it out, because more likely one of these guys probably won't figure out or remember exactly where this is. So we have Keith who's saying, it's like, well, hey, I'll stay here and you go and get the excavator. Like, I know all this information that's really complicated that you're going to have to go and figure all of this out. And so Virgil's like, well, why don't you just go? Like, you seem to know what you're doing. I think it'll be a lot quicker if you go. And Keith's like, are you sure? Because there's going to be a lot of, like, things you're going to have to do. You're going to have to kind of conserve your water. You're going to have to go on and try to get out of the shade, or get out of the sunlight. You're going to have to go on and try to hope that you won't go on and get eaten alive by bugs, because good God. Throughout most of this movie, we just have Zac Efron and, like, bugs are just swarming all over his face the whole entire film. So, as well as Keith is like, same thing, just swarms of bugs all over their face. So, you would have thought these guys would have had some, like, bug spray or some kind of something, but I guess it's just like, oh no, man, like, we want to make it look real, like we didn't, like, put on bug spray or anything like that all these bugs were eating us alive and whatever. So we go on, and so we have Virgil, who's like, well, hey, like, I'm fine. It's only going to be 5 days, right? So shouldn't be a problem. So Keith's going off, and he's like, all right. So it seems like every night there is to be a possible thing of coyotes that are to be swarming upon a campfire. So we go on and have Keith, who gives Virgil water. We go on and we have Keith, who is to give Virgil a knife to defend himself, just in case anything is to happen. Because Keith is to also warn Virgil that at some point there might be some scavengers going and trying to get to this gold. And so just kind of be leery about that you might have to go and fight for your life for this gold. So Keith goes off to get this excavator, as he is to also give Virgil this satellite phone, and saying, like, yeah, man, I'm going to go and I'm going to find some landline, or I'm going to find some phone somewhere, and I'll go on and I'll call you. So we now go on and so really every single one of the times we get these phone calls, because like I'll try to get those out of the way a lot easier because I don't know exactly when all of them are coming. We consistently have it to where every single time Keith is to have some reason why he's delayed. He goes on and saying that the excavator is slowing him down. He's going on mentioning that like it's going to take him longer than expected, and that continues to happen a lot. So this guy only has a certain bit of water. So let's get into the whole survival of things. So in a nutshell, I'm not going to be perfectly talking about this film because there's just like there's very small events, but like there's sometimes where if I don't get every little detail a little perfectly within these 90 some odd minutes because we have like 6 minutes of credits. So we go on here and we have Efron, who at some point is going on and having this kind of one little thing that he is using as shade, and he's using like it's a little kind of tent kind of thing, but it's really just a sheet on a string that he uses as a tent against this tree, and he puts rocks on the back of this little sheet with this string. So we have technically Virgil who has shade, but later and later on here we go and we have Virgil who is eventually seeing this plane crash. So Virgil is going on and taking all of these items and taking certain seats, going on and taking certain metal pieces, and going further and further on and stacking all of these metal pieces against this tree so he can have an even better shelter. So where he is much more having the sun being blocked so he can have a better shading spot. So we go on, and when we have Efron consistently going to this ship that had crashed, and I guess it's a Japanese ship. I don't want to sound insensitive here, but that's what it looks like. That looks side of the emblem, whatever. It looks like some very small plane. Like as if it's like a plane that only has like probably 2 to 3 people that are to usually pilot this, and I guess it just crashed for whatever reason. So we go on and we have Virgil who starts taking pieces from this plane, starts grabbing certain stuff and chucking it, and all of a sudden we have this stranger that is going on and seeing Virgil go and take these pieces. We also had before where Efron was talking to this scorpion, and at one point was to think that I guess the scorpion could be his friend because Virgil was talking to it, but now we have an actual person supposedly. So we go on and we're having this stranger go and ask Virgil questions here, telling him that she doesn't understand why he's exactly here when there's some place down further along that does have water, and why is it that this guy is going on and staying right here? You would have probably thought that maybe Virgil would have decided to go on with this woman just to get more water and then come back, but I guess there was a lack of trust there, or really we could have Virgil possibly think that this girl is leading him back to some camp where he is to get killed off. So we go on and we have Virgil, who is not very trusting of this stranger here, and so it seems like this girl keeps pelting him with questions, and he's to go on and give these kind of vague answers, or he really is to just say it's like, well, hey, I'm waiting for one of my friends who's going to pick me up, and this guy is, of course, like making his way through to here. So, because we had this girl consistently asking, like, "Hey, where are you going? Like, why are you like, is this your camp? Where are you camping? Oh, why are you camping over there by that tree?" And so we go on and we have Virgil who's saying that, oh, well, that's like his place where he takes a dump. And she's like, oh, well, can I go at your place where you take a dump at? You take a crap at? And Virgil's like, no, like you can have this plane and I can have my little place over here. And so she's like, oh. So we more and more have this girl suspicious, and we also have this girl realize that Virgil at this point is getting very dehydrated. To where she's like, "Well, it looks like you're very dehydrated at this point. Like it looks like you're gonna eventually just start to lose your mind." So, really, at this point, like I can't really even trust that Virgil is to even see this woman or believe any of this is really true. That maybe any number of this could be a mirage at some point, or could eventually vanish and not be real. But anyways, the more and more that uh, Virgil is to take this stranger back to his tent, the more she starts to get aggressive, the more she starts to get angry. And we go on, we have Virgil who has to take this woman out with this shovel. All of a sudden have her heavily bleeding from the head, having Virgil realize this woman is dead. So at first he goes on and buries this woman, but then he realizes no, like I think eventually the wolves will try to dig her up or something like that. Maybe I should just try and burn her body. Virgil is to also go and take all this stuff from this woman because at this point it's really just survival. It's kind of sad that there is never to be one day where it rains in this desert. Like, man, does that freaking suck? Like, it would be great if there was like one day where it would just rain. So that way, one, Virgil could get water here, or two, like we could have just Virgil who is to just kind of clean himself. Because I think that would be great also for this character. So we go on and we have it where now Virgil is trying to desperately survive the elements, getting more and more where these bugs are just swarming around him every single day. We go on and we have these coyotes that are going on and consistently howling, barking around him. It seems like there is more coyotes or more dogs or more whatever the heck animals these are. So because I'm not 100% going to say, oh, it's all coyotes or it's all wolves or it's all this, because it seems like that at some point it could just be, oh no, those were all dogs, and I would just be wrong or incorrect or whichever. So we go on here and we, of course, have what ends up happening to Virgil called a desert storm. So as well as Virgil also losing his effing mind, going on and at some point seeing the stranger girl with flames in her eyes, and I'm like, what the is going on now? Like, obviously he must be losing his mind here. Plus, he can't really trust it sometimes if Keith is really calling him, and this seems like a legit call, and because really Virgil is to have a phone call with Keith asking him about like, hey, when did you fix the hose? And Keith is to mention that he had fixed the hose before he left. And it's like, okay, that didn't make any sense. So, and so, like, we just consistently have it where Virgil is consistently asking Keith, like, how long? Like, how long is it? How much longer is this going to take? So, like, we don't have it where like really much of Virgil is giving Keith much of an update, but it is what it is here. So all of a sudden we have this desert storm, And so now, because we had at one point where Virgil was chasing after the snake and was trying to desperately go and get food, and all of a sudden we just have this desert that starts like brushing up towards like, oh my god, this is gonna suck. So Virgil goes on and is in this tent, and he's just kind of waiting out this storm. But it gets to the point where all of a sudden this tent is starting to just uh, like lose all of its pieces, to where now Virgil is now going to have to run for his life to think that he can possibly outrun this storm somehow, because I guess we don't have this guy that just goes on and is to just kind of burrow his way maybe through sand or something, or try to do some like underground thing or whatever to just kind of weigh this whole thing out, because I guess there is no real way to weigh this thing out. um, you would have thought that maybe he would have came up with some kind of like uh, underground thing anyways, because he has nothing but time. um, but I guess not. We have plenty of time where just Virgil is just on, like, just laying on the ground, and it's just like, oh my god, I can just see how just every single day is just the most uncomfortable thing. Plus, we have Virgil, who is a consistent limper, and I'm like, oh my god, I could just imagine, like, this guy trying to outrun this storm and him being limping this whole time, and just like, dude, there's no way I can outrun this. So, after we have Virgil, who is to be basically just face deep into some sand, uh, we have him eventually just arise from all of the sand to have us realize that Virgil is to have a branch in the stomach. I'm like, oh my god, this character, oh man. So we have him just leave this this tree branch in there for the longest time until he finally pulls it out. But he does something smart here. He pulls it out, then goes and makes this fire, and then burns the hole, so that way that hole can be sealed, hoping that eventually like he'll stop bleeding from that area. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of brilliant. I like that whole idea. Like, it doesn't seem like he's just putting a it doesn't seem like he's just like bandaging up the wound and just letting it bleed out. No, it seems like there's a real plan there. So I thought that was kind of smart. So we go on and we just have more and more of Virgil, who's like pour blood all over his face and his head and his whatever, because we really just have it at this point that Virgil is just trying any kind of liquid that is to just be able to like hydrate his body somehow. And I guess that liquid is just blood at this point, because that's all he's got. So we go on and we just have Virgil, who's just pouring blood on his body now. Not all the time, but just the first initial, once he has blood on his hands, he might as well just like pour it all over his chest and his neck. At this point, I'm sure that this guy's skin is severely either blistered or bubbled or whatever at this point, and it just looks disgusting. But like, hey, that's how it looks. That's gonna have to be how it looks when you just can't block yourself from sun, and you have to spend numerous hours just outside because you have nothing better to do. So, or it's either that or it's just sit in the sun for I don't know how long, and you can only do that for until like, because you have to go and hunt for your food. You have to go and figure out a way to survive. But anyways, so after this point, we're just realizing that Virgil is just toast at this point. We still have a satellite phone that Virgil has to dig out, as well as dig out any random number of stuff that he was to have at one point. All of his canned food is all gone. That was like basically gone in the early parts of this, where he had Virgil, who's kind of like taking any little part of can and just getting any little last sip of anything. Um, Really, at this point, we probably could have had really just Virgil, sadly enough, use his own urine to drink his own urine at this point, which he didn't go on and do that. But hey, man, survival is survival. I'm sure at some point any number of people would have probably had to have done that. Um, and I've heard a lot of stories where eventually some people, through survival, would have had to drink their own urine. Sadly enough, to just survive. Because when really looking at it, you can still get food, but how are you going to consistently get a drink? By drinking your own pee, sadly. Um, so with that, so we go on and we have Virgil that at some point was to also dunk all of his water off to the side while he was going on for a thing of food, and he realizes like, oh my god, like I just wasted water. It's like, yeah. So towards the end of this, we start to see these coyotes, we start to see these dogs, we start to see these whatever they are, going and smelling that for this guy that the end is near. And so we have a bunch of these dogs during the day, because we have at night where uh, Virgil is kind of using a torch to kind of scare these things off, whereas now like these things are just coming after this guy in the clear thing of day, because it's like, dude, this guy is bloody, this guy is to smell like death, so might as well just nibble on him anyways, because these things are hungry. So we go on and we're just now having uh, Virgil, who's trying to like swerve through these dogs with this knife, and so, but Virgil is sadly outnumbered here, so the dogs start chewing into him, and we just see him slowly but surely die off here. So we end up finding out that Keith, this whole entire time, had just been waiting for this guy to die off, so Keith could get all the credit for this chunk of gold. And so once Keith is to watch Virgil die by these coyotes, he's going on and getting this excavator to go and collect this gold for them to be rich. Only Keith, rich. So after Keith is to go on and get out of his vehicle, all of a sudden, we had this one scene once before, but we didn't know if that was just a dream or what. What was it? Because Virgil was talking to some other stranger that was to be the twin sister of the girl before. And so this girl had given Virgil some water and was saying like, hey, like, have you seen my sister? As Virgil's like, at this point, because he is just so sick and so dehydrated that like to even answer somebody would be a massive task. So we go on and we have Keith, who gets shot with this arrow, and he gets shot in the heart and gets killed. For us to just naturally assume these scavengers are to go on and take all these things, take all this gold, take everything, and live a better life because these guys are dead. What else could I have assumed or imagined or anything that is to come out of this story? Because there is nothing that happens after that. We just have to naturally assume. There is also one point where Virgil was just tempted to just go and break off a big chunk of gold because he did that. And when Keith is to call, Virgil goes on and tells Keith, it's like, hey man, I've been out here long enough. I just took this big massive chunk of gold and it's a pretty good size. And Keith is like, hey man, like stay there, and like we're gonna go and we're gonna get this big chunk of gold out and we're gonna be rich. But like I'm assuming probably about around that time, that's probably around the 5 day mark, because I think Keith was probably lying to Virgil and just waiting him out to eventually die from starvation, while I'm sure probably Keith had this plan to a T, basically after they were to go and find this big chunk of gold. So, yeah. What gold really means, I guess, for this uh, distant future or whatever future that this thing is to have, because this video is to. This movie is to say that this is in some near future. So I'm like, okay, that is what it is, I guess. But let me pause here for a second. All right, so let me know how you felt about gold. Other than that, I think I'm going to get out of here because I think that's all that I've really just gone on and said about this movie. So let me know how you feel about gold. If you've seen only the trailer, if you've gone on and seen this movie because maybe you found an app that I did. But other than that, I think I'm going to get out of here because I think that's all I have to say about this movie. Because I was kind of pausing here for a moment. And yeah, I think that was it. So I'm going to get out of here. Bye, bye. Bye, bye.